Hello peeps, it's a hillbilly half-wit. How are you today? I just thought I'd do another video today because I think I'm quite positive today. It's a very frosty morning, everything's froze up, so not so good on farming front, but from other things, yes. I think after realising what happened with Facebook yesterday, with that censorship, I think we're winning the battle, you know. I never actually thought that until yesterday. I'm always a positive person and I'm never going to give up on this sort of thing. And I thought it'd take a few years to remove the Labour Party myself, because I don't think they'll change at all with farming. But I will say, looking on the news this morning and some of the things I usually follow, I think this thing is all going to tumble down. So as I was talking about Facebook this morning, when these restrictions are lifted, it means more people will be able to say the truth about things, and your normal guy and your normal woman and your normal teenager is going to look at this and think, Jesus, we've been lied to for a long time here about various subjects. Of course, some of them won't listen, whatever. And like I told you about my friend who I was with yesterday, it doesn't matter what you tell them. They just automatically go to the political side. So they don't care if it's right or wrong for some reason. My friend never used to be like that. With this grooming gang thing, for instance, when this all came out, me and him were right on it with this, but this time, because of your political choice, they decide to ignore that because it'll hurt the political party, which I'm not like that. I'll say when anything is wrong. Like I said, I quite like Musk for bringing this up, but I don't like various things he's doing. So, you know what I mean? And same with Trump. I quite like the way he's for making the state smaller and giving more power back to us. But like I said, that could all go wrong or whatever. But what I think is happening, sorry, it's job to hold this today. What I think is actually happening is the normal person over this last 6 months since Labour have been in power in the UK have realised what's going on. It suddenly dawned on them, these people really aren't there for you to make your lives better. They're there to push an agenda, be it green or trans or whatever. And they really don't care what you think. So in the past, whereas they'd be afraid to say anything, because if you go to school, go to pick a kid up or everything, you say anything wrong, you're automatically being censored. You're self-censoring yourself because you won't be in this club. We all know how it works. I have it myself. That's why I won't go on Messenger, in these Messenger clubs on metal detecting forums and things like that. Because you usually get one person at the head of it all who, if they decide they don't like somebody else who's in their group, like for instance, with the motocross thing in clubs, I like everybody in all the club. I got no bad words to say about anybody. And if something is on, I would say to everybody, come here, do this, do that. But it isn't like that on the other side. You have to remember, people who are like that, they just invite their certain buddies into these chat groups and then they shun the rest. That's how society works, and especially for the last 10 years. I can't stand that. That's why I won't go on these old chat groups and stuff. Because you're shunning people just because they maybe don't agree with you on one thing. I don't like it. It's a form of bullying to me. So in the playground, it's happening with kids. Somebody will say, oh, his father or his mother doesn't support that. My mum or my dad told him he'd keep away from him, and next thing he's shunned or whatever. Well, with this thing now, this last 6 months of Labour, people are beginning to realise that most of what they were saying was just complete lies to get into power. That is the be-all and end of it. If they'd have stuck to their manifesto, it'd have been different, but they've really ignored all of the manifesto and done what they want because they lied. And the Conservatives were just as bad before. Like I told you, I quite liked Boris, but he got took over by the state, in my opinion. He was a middle-of-the-road guy from both sides. I quite liked him. I know a lot of people have a go at me for this, but I actually quite liked him because he helped get through the thing that I wanted to get through. But the state took him over, and then his own party, because basically the parties in Westminster are all the same. They all got the same agendas, and they try to get to the same way. And these people realise this, the state, and they use it. So that's why they don't like reform now. And you'll see all attacks on everybody is by reform, against reform. Now, like people saying, yeah, yes, I totally understand in time they will become the same sort of thing, but you've got to use your vote to remove people who are like that, in your local MP as well. But like I was saying, I think this system could fall very, very quickly when Trump gets in, because if that happens on YouTube now, and people start actually seeing the truth about the various things, like the alphabet people, for instance, where huge amounts of these people who've had these operations are in a hells of a state. I was listening to some guy on YouTube who was in charge of looking after all this thing. He was a doctor, and the crisis of these people, nobody's talking about it because they have these operations, and then after they've had it, they're thinking, oh my God, or they're having these pills to block off the hormones and things, and they don't realize what's happening. And he tried to get a panel going where people who've had this talk to people who were thinking of having it done, but they wouldn't allow it because he said everybody that comes to him wish they'd never had that done. They've all, obviously, most of them, he said, he thinks they were gay, nothing else, but they've had these operations and basically been sort of steered into it, and because it's cool, and life has been destroyed. Now, people are seeing through this at last because it's madness. It's a madness. It's an absolute madness. So the point of this video was, I think actually Trump coming into power has done something I didn't think it would happen so quick. He's actually brought a bit of sense to the world. And while we were talking about this subject, and of course things can go very wrong as well, but while we're talking about this subject, I see earlier before they were saying about the Guatemala Canal and how he wants to take that back. Well, I happen to know a bit of facts about that because I looked at that ages ago. Now, originally, when it was done, the Yanks finished it off, and then they had this agreement that they could basically run the canal. And then, I'm trying to remember when it was then, the UK and the Yanks were running it, I think. You'll have to bear with me with that because I can't quite remember that bit. But then it ended up that the Yanks were in charge. And they had everywhere back from the canal itself, I think, was it 500 meters? I can't quite remember if that really was. It was something like 500 meters all the way each side of the canal that they had power over. So even though the country itself was running everything else, they owned and they took the profits from that. Then they gave it back to that country and let them run it. But what happened was China took control of it and was running it instead. So what Trump is doing is he's taking back what originally was there. He's saying we want the 500-meter thing to take control of it again, not have these other countries, which is fair enough, I think. But with Canada and that, he's basically just trying to scare the people in Canada, not the people, the left-wing parties in in Canada, do this or else. And he's doing it to Mexico. So he's saying he wants the Mexico, Gulf of Mexico be called the Gulf of America, because he's basically saying if you don't sort out this problem of the border, I'm going to basically come in there and take over the whole of the place. That's what he's saying. And it's very clever. Because you remember this guy, that thing he says of the art of the deal. I've never read it, but I've heard people talking about it. You basically go in and you create a holy hell, you fall out with them big style, and then you kiss and make up, and everything's lovey-dovey. That's what he's up to. And if people can't see that, they don't know the guy. He's not a warmonger, but he's basically talking tough. And probably a similar thing will happen in this Russia thing, where, like I said, Russia have pulled out of the south of Syria now. See, I think that's in the deal, where they pull out of Syria, and he gives them what they want. So Putin gets back what he wants in the other place. That's what I think is happening. But like I said, I could all be wrong, but I think he's a lot sharper than they make out. He says things out of the blue just to wind the mainstream media up, and he talked too much on his first term. But I think it's going to be very different this time. So could be interesting. I got to say, from what I've seen at the start of this year, Labour are on a very sticky wicket here. Even Labour advisors I heard on talking, who are really up there. I heard them talking the other day saying, if they see Labour stopping these council elections, it's going to be a disaster, because it'll be attack on democracy. That's from a Labour guy. So my thing to that, if the people in those areas are having their council elections stopped, just stop paying your council tax. That's what I do. I get a real thing out there in the open, say nobody pay your council tax till there's an MP there. That's what I say. And there's nothing they could do. So, because they broke a contract, haven't they? So there we are. I'm looking very optimistic today. I've rambled on a bit. It's a bit cold here today. And yeah, and what I said before about my YouTube channel, I had a thing come up, an anniversary for 12 years on YouTube. And I was thinking, one of the guys in the comments said, YouTubers started before that. Yeah, I started in 2008. So it must have been the anniversary when I got a monetary or something like that, because my channel started in 2008. I've been on YouTube since it started. Of course, only as a bit of fun and like a personal thing. But until the last couple of years, I've never really done anything like this and got a bit popular. And I don't know how it's all happened. You lot seem to like me. Thank you all for subscribing. Like I said, I'm a normal guy. Of course, I want to see one side of things getting a bit more control at the moment, because I think the UK and the Western world is trying to remove us people from there and get democracy in a state where we'll never be able to vote ourselves back in again. I think that's what's happening around the European Union and the UK. And we're on that verge, really. And when I heard a few facts yesterday, Jordan Peterson said there's a very interesting conversation he had with Piers Morgan. Bloody hell, there's some facts he threw out I didn't know. There's 5 million Pakistanis, I think he said, in the UK, and there's only 5 million in the whole of the USA. And another thing he said, which is unbelievable, do you remember that case where that woman was what's called by her husband in France about a month ago? And they had about 50 people that they were shagging his wife, and she was being drugged. Horrible thing to do. Now, Peterson said, throughout the world, there's 5% of every population in the world that are nutters. He said that people don't seem to understand, they seem to want to ignore it, but they'll do anything, especially men. They are predators. And he said there's 5% in the UK, in America, everywhere. It's a huge amount of people. And he reckoned that thing in France, where that bloke was drugging his missus, the guy was streaming it on his internet or something. There were 70,000 people watching it. Other blokes. So that's scary, isn't it? So I totally understand this. There's perverts in every bit of society. I think they should be having these chemical castration myself. That's what I think should happen. But when he said them facts, you imagine in the UK, we've got roughly 70 million people. So 5% of 70 million are basically not jobs. So there we are. So like I say, thank you all for commenting, and I know we can't all agree on everything, but I say the truth, and I'm better like it. I'd rather get it out there. I don't have to remember if I've lied or not, because I don't lie. Ta-da, and please subscribe.